Have you ever experienced a seismic event? Hey friends, it's Pastor Mike from Fellowship Church. Always good to connect with you midweek. Hope you're staying safe. Hope you're staying warm. Just know that we love you and we're praying for you, of course. Have you ever experienced a seismic event? Now, that's what scientists call it. People like us usually call them earthquakes. Earthquakes happen when the Earth's crust begins to move and makes for some pretty unpleasant circumstances up here. But seismic events, they're described by something a man named Charles Richter called the Richter scale, and they rate how serious the seismic event is on a Richter scale. And of course, you're probably thinking by now, well, Pastor Mike, we don't live in California. We live in Michigan. We don't get earthquakes around here. Well, yes, you do. Biblically speaking, you do. Do you remember that story from Mark chapter 4 when Jesus invites his disciples to get into a boat at night and head off across the Sea of Galilee? It's an 8-mile journey across the Sea of Galilee. My guess is once that journey began, the disciples were wishing he had just called an Uber instead. But once they got out onto the lake, a storm rose up. And the disciples were all bailing and thinking that they were going down with the ship. And where's Jesus? Well, he's still in the boat with them, but he's asleep. And they actually have to wake him up in the midst of this storm in which there was danger of losing life. They thought for sure they were all drowning. Jesus is asleep in the boat, and they wake him up, and of course, Jesus calms the waves. Well, friends, there's something about that story that maybe you hadn't picked up on before, and that is that that type of storm in the biblical language is called a seismos. A really, really serious storm is a seismos, meaning something that shakes your world is a seismic event. That's where we get the word from, by the way. So you have experienced earthquakes in your life. Maybe not the kind of earthquake where the ground is actually shaking, but you've had occasions in your life when life shook a bit, when something seemed unsteady, when it felt like your life or your world was rocking a bit here, and you've experienced seismic events. And for some of you, you've experienced events that were a ways up on the Richter scale. Here's what Jesus does in the midst of that seismic event. First of all, he didn't vacate the boat. He stayed in the boat with them. I think that's a great lesson for people like us, because even today, while we're living in the pandemic, Jesus would say to us, I'm living through it with you. He didn't just escape off to heaven so he could avoid all the pain and suffering and uncertainty of this world. He says, I'm living through the pandemic with you, and he's fully in charge of everything we're experiencing right now. Those disciples couldn't see it in the boat, but Jesus was still in control of that storm. He let them experience some things, and then he took mastery over the storm and calmed those waves down. Friends, Jesus is still in control of everything in this world, even when you and I face some seismic, pandemic-type events. And maybe there's something else going on in your life right now, perhaps with a relationship, maybe something related to job, personal finances, maybe even your own self-perception, understanding of self. Maybe you've got some internal seismic events taking place these days. Just know that Jesus chooses to ride those storms out with us. He doesn't abandon us in the midst of it, and he is the Lord of every seismic event you'll ever face here on planet Earth. Just know that for sure. Know that we love you. We're praying for you. Know that we care about you. Stay safe. Stay warm. God bless. Bye-bye.